this. Like, you're one of the bigger pages I actually like and respect because you do the presuming competence and you understand, and it's awesome because you help get the message out that a lot of parents need to hear.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I
Yes.
appreciate that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
I do my best.
yeah.
I feel like it's as like a parent, I feel like I've learned the most from other parents probably. And I feel like how once you know like what we know, how can you
Yeah.
not share that, you know?
That's just it. It's almost like you feel guilty for not telling other parents. And then it's to the point, and then you see the impact it has in our kids' lives. So it's like, I kind of just want that for all the kids. And it's less about the parents, it's more about the kid. No, I'm just kidding. But
No,
it's seriously,
yeah.
yeah, I really want them to be able to like get the respect they deserve, basically. And if it means us coming on here blabbing, that's awesome, and I'm willing to do that. So
Yeah, 100%.
So main thing is, you guys have. How long have you guys? When did you find out about spelling, and how long have you guys been at it?
It has been probably 2 years since I was like I read Underestimated. I watched the documentary Spellers.
Yes.
And I'm gonna be honest with you, I was like so reluctant, which is why I like to share my story because I get that as a parent. You know, Hudson, I think, had just or almost was turning 9, and he's 10 now.
Yeah.
When I took him to his first Spell to Communicate session, and I was like, fine, I'll try it. Like I was just like, fine. Like I didn't really want to. I didn't want to have any more false hope. I had kind of gotten to a point where I'm like, I'll take care of this. I felt like nobody's helping, and I'll just take care of him, you know, and I'll figure it out. And so I finally took him, and I was just, and I feel like I always presumed competence in Hudson, like I thought I did. Like I knew he understood me. I knew he got so much more of the world than he could say or express, right? I knew he was there. But when I went to our first session, I was like, I'm so sorry. Like that's how I felt. Like I am so sorry because I thought I did presume competence and I didn't. I didn't at all. Like he knew so much more. And it wasn't like he went to the session and was like, right, like talking to me or spelling. Like it's not like that happens. Hudson's been doing it for a year and a half now, and he's not an open speller. We're just transitioning to like we're going back and forth right now between the 3 letter boards and the 26 letter board. And like it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. But what he can do is all his schoolwork.
Yes.
You know, I can teach him at his 4th grade level. Like I mean, we really go above because he can.
Yeah.
But you know, he can do all this work, and just the confidence that he instantly had, and how it changed our whole relationship and changed. Like spelling changes so much. It's not just like, oh, we're sitting here doing lessons on a letterboard. He now can initiate things he's never did. He just learned to ride a bike, which I know is because we've been spelling for a long time. It helps so much more. Sorry, I'm rambling, I know, but
No, you're saying all good stuff that I totally relate to, and I'm going to piggyback on right now. So kind of like what you were saying, I was in the what do you call it? The mind frame that Marissa was in her own little world sometimes. Or is that my microphone doing the feedback? I don't even have a microphone. I don't know why it's doing that.
I don't hear it.
Yeah. Oh, okay, good. Maybe it's just me then. Okay. So like I was in that thing because you know you'd be like, hey Marissa, come here, and she wouldn't respond sometimes, and at certain times she'd come right away, and it's like okay, like I always thought like, well, she's in her own little world right now, or not really understanding or not hearing me. But then to come to find out when you learn about the apraxia and the brain body disconnect and stuff like that, it's like they're always there, they're always paying attention more than you'd like them to be most of the time. But same thing, like the presuming competence just mantra that carried on to like just in all aspects of life helped so much because it's finally like, man, we're getting the respect we deserve. And like, I gotta think that was like a huge anxiety relief because I'm sure at a certain times our kids were thinking like, dude, we're screwed. Like they're never gonna really figure it out. And what are we gonna do? We're trapped. And so Underestimated and Spellers like changed my life. But Ito and Autism Land was the first. Have you ever read that one? Ito?
I've only heard like clips of it. I haven't read the whole book. Yeah.
Well, I listened to it or whatnot, and that blew my mind. That was the first one, and I share the story, but I remember driving to work, listening to it, and I'm just bawling my eyes out. And then, like, I'm just like, dude, what the hell? We got this so wrong. And my wife had already listened to it. She said, you got to listen to this now. We're doing stuff wrong, blah, blah, blah. And then, like, I remember rolling up on the job, and I'm like, dude, and I'm like, I'm already late, and I'm just sitting in the car crying. And then I just get out and just like, no, guys, my eyes are red because I'm stoned. Don't worry about it. But it was like one of those things where it's like, dude, I was a wreck for a little bit because like I'm like, dude, my baby girl, I kind of like messed her up, and I had guilt for that for a long time because I was just like, man, I kind of had it wrong. And talk about the bike. Like Marissa's got the bike now. We got one of those. It's like a bigger. It's almost like a tricycle, but the big wheels on the back. I forget what they call it. But dude, she cruises now, and like her brother's behind her, and it's just like. And I know you got two sons too, and it's very similar because I see you trucking them, Hudson around to sporting events, and that's our life too. Like, come on, Marissa, it's hockey, and it's just awesome. And just that alone, stuff like that is like stuff I didn't know if we'd ever really even be able to do. And now it's like, dude, we go to hockey Monday, Wednesday, Friday night. You know what I mean? I'm by a snack bar, and I don't have to like tackle her to not go by it. And I mean, we still have our moments or whatnot, but it's just so good, like how much progress has happened just through this presuming competence and then the spelling alone. Because that's basically the main thing I want to do on this whole platform or whatever is just like, dude, please presume competence in your kid. Whatever you got to do beyond that, like I talk about AAC, spelling. I talk about spelling because nobody else does. But whatever you got to do beyond that, do it. Just make sure you're giving them the respect they deserve.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And to add to that, I feel like there's different levels, or you go through a journey of like presuming competence. You know what I mean? And because I know for me, so I don't know if you know this, but my background, so right when I graduated college, which I graduated with behavioral psychology, that was my degree. I didn't know what I was going to do. I went directly into ABA right out of college. That's what I did. Is I went into ABA, and so I was like now they call it RBTs, right? So I was like in, and that's what I did for years, right? So I worked with autistic kids for years in home doing ABA, and so I think I was always a little bit different than most of my bosses and people I worked with because I tended to side with parents, and I was like always the RBT. They didn't call it that yet, but I was always the RBT that like, and this was like old school ABA, right? So I started when it was like, don't look at them, ignore them. They're crying, and you ignore them until they do what you say, right? Yeah. Like it's all about like compliance. And I was always the RBT that was like, I'm just gonna give him a hug. He's just really sad. You know what I mean? And then we'll move on. So I was always kind of like didn't follow the rules exactly. Yeah. And always like sided with the parents because I'd have parents like just crying to me like about schools and things, and obviously things I didn't understand because I wasn't a parent, but I would just be like, it's okay, like it'll be okay. But I always thought, I believed like these kids, like these were my people from the beginning. You know what I mean? I just connected with these kids, and I thought I presumed competence, and I think I did to the best of my ability at that point from what I knew, but and I think it still is this journey because even when Hudson first started spelling to now, I still I'm still on that uphill. I'm still learning how to presume competence because what I see, I mean, now any doubts I have, I like throw them out. I just go, nope, I don't have those doubts. But I get as parents that you can see your child come on a letterboard, spell these words that you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know if they knew their colors, or I didn't even know if they knew their ABCs, right? Which is also a misconception is your kids can't spell.
Yeah, right? You don't even have to teach them that.
No, they know how to do it. Hudson never showed us that he knew how to spell. Like we had no clue,
And same thing, just not to cut you off, but we did like the little like teaching them the letters and stuff, but it wasn't anything like, dude, the stuff she was spelling right off the rip. It's like, how the hell do you even know that? Like better than I could spell.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Hudson spells so much better than me. I like screw up all the time, and I'm like, wait, sorry, okay.
That's my wife too. So she's got to write the letters down and like look as she's doing it.
Yes, totally. But I get how you can see that, and then when, especially as a parent, you go and you see your child, like behaving in ways that you're like, well, if they're
is he there? Yeah.
If he's 10, why would he be doing ABCD, right? Like why would you do that? And obviously now we know apraxia and dyspraxia and the brain body disconnect, and when you learn about that, then you're able to presume competence and understand that. And so, but it's like this journey of presuming competence, and what that really means, like in my case, is that Hudson is 10. So if I'm truly presuming competence in him, that means that I'm treating him like a 10-year-old. He's thinking like a 10-year-old. He wants friends like a 10-year-old. He wants to do what 10-year-olds does. And Hudson, like his comfort and his like motor loops, I would say, is like watching like Spider-Man or Iron Man. Right now it's Iron Man, right? And he watches it over and over, which actually is pretty appropriate for a 10-year-old. Yeah. He's always kind of liked Avengers. But like if I go and I buy Hudson, which I used to do, like Spider-Man shirts and Iron Man shirts and like suits and stuff like that. Like I remember one Halloween, I was like, because he would watch Spider-Man all the time. And so I'd be like, oh, here's a Spider-Man costume. Well, he was 9. He didn't want to be Spider-Man anymore, you know? But I was like, oh, but you watch Spider-Man all the time. And it's just like learning. So for really presuming competence, and say he was watching, you know, Bluey, right? Because a lot of older kids, maybe they're watching like younger kids shows, and we think like, oh, they're young in their mind, they want to watch it. Well, no, these are motor loops, these are comforts, these are things to help them regulate.
Yes.
And so what presuming competence really means is that no matter what their bodies are doing or what they're watching or what we think we see, no, they're still 10. They still want to do this, and you have to think of them as like a 10. So for example, I get a lot of questions about like potty training, which Hudson is, and that was a struggle that we went through for a long time, and he is, and he does great. But if you had like a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 15-year-old who has accidents or isn't potty trained, they don't want to.
Yes.
Right? It's not like they're like, oh, I don't want to be potty trained. Oh, I don't understand. No, it's their bodies. So I think getting that mindset of like, as a parent, you have to be like, this is how old my child is. This is how I'm going to treat them, no matter what their bodies are doing. And I think that's a hard thing to put together for us, you know?
Well, because it's kind of like out of the norm from what we're used to. And it was a big deal because, like, I didn't know, like, if she felt emotions like fear and embarrassment and jealousy and anger, whatever. But because, like, there was so many times where, like, her body wouldn't react to certain situations, but you don't really know what's going on in her mind, and you can't read the body to figure that out. And that's where things just get super confusing. And it's one of those things where it's like a practice makes perfect, and the more you see it, the more you understand. But same thing, we dealt with, so she would have like crazy sensory issues. And then like early on, I remember like the first Halloween we found out she wanted to be Belle from the Beauty and the Beast. That was what she wanted to be. We found a costume. She was in the store, picked it out. Come time to put it on, dude, she like was punching us and ripping it off and all that. And it's like, oh crap, this is confusing. It was just a brain body disconnect. It was like an impulse or a motor, whatever the hell, and a sensory issue. And then once we coached her through it, she put that damn dress on, and then we couldn't really get it off of her. You know what I mean? So it was one of those things where it's like you don't really like understand, and it's so hard because it's not like our typical sons where it's like, what do you want? Okay, that, and then you get everything because they can communicate. So it's just a whole, like, you kind of got to throw everything out the window that you thought you knew and restart. And it's tough for parents, man. I know. And then you carry the guilt because it's like, I always thought about like how we treated her before and like how frustrating that must have been. And then a big thing was, so we were struggling really hard to get her placement in school. And like this shit we were saying, like how hard it was and like just frustrated in the money and like all, dude, we were going through it, me and my wife. Like, what the hell are we going to do? Because we're trying to get her in. Regardless, she's sitting there listening to that. You know what I mean? And then we don't realize, like, dude, that's probably taking an emotional toll on her as it is because, like, dude, she don't want to cause her parents chaos in their life or she don't want to make them feel sad and lose sleep. And that's what we're talking about and, like, financial worries and all that. And it's like, dude, she's a kid. She don't want to be responsible for that. And then in turn, I had problems because like I would come home from working a 12-hour shift and she wouldn't even acknowledge me walking through the door when she was like 4 years old. And it's like, man, I couldn't wait to see her. And it doesn't even seem like she cares. Dude, they care. They can't get their body to go up to you and give you the hug and give you the kiss and show that they care. So just make sure you guys, whoever's listening, know that your kids, dude, our kids love us more than anything, even if they can't express that. And now I'm learning that. But it was hard. That was a tough, whatever, pill to swallow or whatever. And then just to revamp your whole frame of mind is different. It's difficult.
Yeah, it really is. And it's really hard to like understand that like the outside doesn't match the inside.
Yes.
You know, like what we see, it doesn't match. And I think that's really hard because we rely so much on our senses, you know, like we rely on what we see and what we hear. And so like I really had to train, and especially I think coming from like ABA background, which I've done. I mean, I did ABA all the way up until a year ago, you know, and I really had, there's some things especially, and some ABA has gone really naturalistic and, you know, like I see change definitely since I started, and I'm like, cool, but the presuming competence isn't really there, right? And I really had to change my mindset of like, okay, all this stuff that I've learned, right, that like school has taught me, like all my education, I like, there's some things I just have to be like, nope, like I seriously have to block off. And especially because I'm Hudson's practitioner right now too, you know, and I'm emotionally connected with him. Like it's hard, right? So I really have to train myself with him to like any doubts, any thoughts, anything that I'm just like, I cut them off right away. And that was something that I really had to work, like I still work on, but I'm much better at. But
They,
But
they
I get so
definitely, not to cut you off, but they, just to piggyback on that, because it's so important, they feel vibes, man. So if you're off and you're not doing well, like even, because we're all kind of wrecked sometimes or whatnot, and even whatever else is going on with the other, if you're not in the moment and you're off and you're filled with anxiety or emotion or a wreck, it's not good for them either. It's like they feel that and the connection's not there. Because my wife and Marissa kind of hit like not like a plateau, but they weren't really like my wife was getting frustrated because it was like you were doing better 2 months ago. What the hell? And same thing. It's like then that emotion carries off to her, and she's not regulated, so therefore her spelling sessions aren't going to be as like good or progressive. They're not going to progress as much. So,
yeah.
and I commented the one time because I just wanted to make sure, like, and it was, I know you probably realized this, but I learned at a spellers panel that the one, he was, she was like 20 some years old or whatever. And she said it was hard for me to get open with my mom because I love her so much. And there was so much more emotion. And then that made so much more sense because my daughter's way more open with her practitioners and my wife's awesome on the boards. So it's like, that's a thing where it can block them. And that's awesome that you realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know, like, I'm like, I need to get Hudson a practitioner. Like, I am a certified practitioner,
Yeah.
but like with, yeah, it just is so different with your kid. And I get that. And I've heard so many spellers say that as well, you know, that it's just really, and I'm like, yeah, it totally makes sense. And that's
Yes.
why too, it's really come because at first I was so like, I'm going to spell every single day. I'm going to like be on it. And now I like check in with myself. And I'm like, am I ready to spell today? Because if
That's,
I'm not, yeah,
and
like
that
it's not going to,
it goes with whatever therapy you're using with your child, man.
yeah,
Because like like I had Dana on the one time, and Jess was calling her like, "What are we doing?" Blah blah blah. And we were going down all the time. She's like, "Take a break for like a few days. Just don't do it. Go
yeah,
play." You know what I
yeah,
mean? And that helped because sometimes you got to do that stuff. And that's where when I look back on like the old way of therapy that we used to do and that you were taught, it's like the 40 hours a week, just bam, sit down and stuff. It's like that's probably not good regardless. And like you said, I think they're adapting with the times because they're forced to and they see it, and that's awesome. So whatever, I think whatever this movement that's happening with the presuming competence and the spelling and all that, the other forms of therapy are going to have to recognize. And
yeah,
I appreciate professionals because you were trained for, dude, you had to put some serious work, time, and money in to get that degree, and then to find out that it's like maybe it all wasn't really what it was cracked up to be. And I actually interviewed somebody on TikTok, and dude, I had so much respect for her because she was an old SLP or whatever, and no bashing that because that's totally a needed field. But she was just like, dude, I knew once I found out about spelling and she had an autistic brother, she's like, I left the field. I couldn't do this anymore because the guilt was like, I don't care about money. Like, I'm treating these kids wrong. And they won't recognize what I know or talk about apraxia or any of that. I'm gone. And now she's doing her own thing and is doing good. And I think she's taking the spelling courses now. But it's just like, dude, that's awesome because when professionals will like admit and adapt, and it's just it makes everything so much better. And that's just I don't know why sometimes it's hard because I do concrete, I learn new things, and you gotta like stuff comes out or new information or whatever, and you just adapt because we're all this stuff is still pretty new when you, in the grand scheme of things. So it's like to think we figured out autism in 20 years, and I say this all the time, dude, they had us eating off the food pyramid up until like a couple years ago. You know what I mean? That was the science. So it's like things are changing and we're learning new stuff. And like, why would autism be any different? And why would non-speaking be any different? We don't know. And when we learn something and there's proof in the pudding, we should all like acknowledge that and take advantage instead of question.
yeah. I know it. I have so many feelings about it, and some I just have to turn off, or else I'm gonna like lose my mind.
Yeah.
But I don't like. Part of me is so angry that I didn't know about apraxia and dyspraxia. You know, like I'm so mad. And when Hudson, like, so coming from ABA, I remember Hudson. So Hudson kind of had like a crazy birth. He was born dead. Like he needed CPR. They told us he was going to die at a week old and to like say your goodbyes. Then they told me he was going to be a vegetable. And then he came home and he like was followed by every doctor because he was like this miracle baby. And he not only developed on track, but he was superior in his cognition, his motor, his expressive language, his receptive language, right? All these things you're like checking off. And so when he turned 2, I remember thinking like, all right, we are out of the woods of any major problem, right? And I think I took my first deep breath when he was 2. And then when he was 2.5, he just wasn't progressing. And he started having seizures and absent seizures. And then by the time he was 3, he had lost all his speech. And it took us till he was 4 to he was diagnosed with autism. So it was this whole thing, and he had a pretty weird regression, and it was just weird, right? And I remember thinking when he was 4, okay, he's like, he had just turned 4, and I remember being devastated because I had lost so much time to get him the services he needed, right? Because for my background, it was like early intervention, and nobody like helped me. Nobody was like, oh, it's good, like da da da, right? So you figure it out all on your own, and you try all this stuff. And so then when Hudson was almost 9, and I'm hearing about Spell to Communicate, and I go to it and it works, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like now I'm pissed again, you know, like I'm pissed because I'm like because I feel so bad for him. Like he had to go 8, almost 9 years of his life, pretty much, right? Of like
a roller coaster of being misunderstood.
Yeah, of people being like, oh no, he doesn't know. Oh, like people constantly were trying to tell me like my expectations were too high for him, and he's not gonna have friends, and he's not gonna play with his brothers, and he doesn't understand. He's not aware, right? Like all these things that you just get fed and fed and fed and fed and fed, that like it pisses me off. Like it made me so mad, you know? And I feel like I did a pretty good job of not really buying into it. But I mean I did somewhat, you know, because I wasn't where I'm at now. And then I think about, oh my gosh, like those people who are in their 30s or 40s, 20s, like it breaks my heart. It literally breaks my heart. And I'm just like, and it makes me so mad, you know, because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like this was things that we should have known already. And I think we had signs of it. I think we started to know, and then it got shut down, you know, like a lot of things.
Yeah, well,
but
it's kind of funny you say that. We had like the same exact situation with Marisha. Her birth was terrible, and that was our first child, so it was like a train wreck for us, like the labor and everything. And then they took her in ICU. She was like fine and breathing and stuff, but I remember like she pooped or whatever when she was whatever, and then she was like choking on stuff, and they had an emergency C-section, and they were like it was like they were like rushing us but trying not to make us panic. And then like I knew something was off because I was like reading vibes and like this was not cool. And then I like heard them in the other room like these people got to go first because we were like so that was a nightmare. And then same thing, like everything was cool, and then all of a sudden like it was like 13, 14, I think she got diagnosed at 18 months. It was like right before that she started doing weird stuff like lining up toys weird, and then she wasn't speaking anymore or mimicking anything, and the eye contact and all that stuff. So then, like, we got the diagnosis, and then we just do what they tell us to do and follow their standard course of action, which doesn't help everybody, obviously. And just when I look at it, like, I am mad at myself for not knowing better, but I can't help but be pissed at them because they don't, like, they never talked about, like, gut health or, like, and then you go and I'm going to this school that we're spent our whole life savings on and stuff, and they're sending home like toddler curriculum, and you're like, okay, that's what I think she knows because that's what the professionals are telling us. And then like I'll share this before, they like once sent home a progress report when she's like 6 years old that she didn't know who I was because I couldn't identify, she couldn't point to me or whatever. And like, dude, that's like, damn, she's that dumb, and that's what you can't help but think. And I'm like, that's not right. She knows who the hell her dad is. And then we find out about spelling or whatever. We live in Ohio. We drive to Florida because that's the only place we knew had it. And then, like, dude, she was spelling out, like, I'll share this story real quick. Like, we go in the room. She's, like, running around doing laps while Dana's reading this, like, freaking, like, 6th grade lesson or some shit. And I'm like, what is going on here? What are we doing? Wow, another waste of money. Sweet. So she's, like, not even paying attention, it seems like, and she's making noise louder than Dana's even reading. And then sure as shit, Dana gets her, at this point, we're just on the 3 letterboards or whatnot. And I forget it's all like a blur. She starts to like gently poke the answers out. And she gets like 2 or 3 letters in a row. I'm like, what the fuck? We're talking about barn animals at home, dude. And she's like doing 6th grade science shit right now. And this is bananas. And then you're like, dude, I'm pissed. Because that's your natural emotion. Like they took advantage of us, and it's like that. So you're like it's just a baggage of emotion because you're like you feel bad for your kid, then you feel bad for the but you feel bad for your kid for having to go through it, and then you feel bad for like treating them the way that you were because you were completely underestimating their intelligence. And it is a vicious cycle. But I mean, I look at, and not to like brag, like thank God we found out when we did, because 7, 8 years we're both about the same boat when we first found out about this and started the presuming competence. But there's 30, 40-year-old kids, and then the people that died that lived in silent prisons their entire life. It's like, man, that's just brutal. And I don't know, man, we can make sure that we blab, and hopefully that doesn't happen for anybody.
Yeah.
So real quick, my microphone sounds fine to you, Kaley?
Yeah, it sounds fine.
Okay, good. Because I must be getting weird feedback, but that's good. As long as I'm good and everybody, is my microphone okay? Might be my echo. Okay. So where do you guys live? There's no practitioners in your state, is there? Because I remember seeing your videos before you had to travel at first, right?
Yeah. So there is one like about 4 hours away.
Yeah.
But we used to go to Vegas, which was just like 2 hours, and so we used to go there. And then she moved, and so yeah. So I've tried to get up, like when my twins have soccer, and we go up north. I've been trying to get it. We just
That's awesome.
But yeah.
And I thank God you're certified and know at least the basics. And I mean, obviously you might be a little handicapped because of the emotion and everything, but at least you know, and you guys are working. And that was also the true thing is with the knowledge of like the what do you call it, just like standard curriculum, Marissa would do fine with chess. It was when the open statements happened. I think that there's a lot of emotions involved, and that's where she took off with the practitioners. So doing like lessons and stuff, I'm sure I've seen you guys do good with that, and at least that's something. So that's awesome too. And we're just grateful that we're like 20 minutes away from them now. So, but that was how, when we first found out, it was Florida. Like, it was like ABA took all our money, and then whatever I saved that year, it was like, oh, now we got to drive to Florida for freaking once a month. And then we did the immersion weeks and stuff like that. And it was whatever. The investment was totally worth it. And I think a big thing with I think it's natural for us to be angry and pissed or whatnot, but in the grand scheme of things, I also got to let it go because, like you said, I started to realize, like, dude, not these professionals. A lot of them aren't like trying to harm our kids. They're just telling what they were taught. So it's like nobody usually gets into the autism field for the big money. It's more along the lines, I want to help people make a difference. So you only know what you're told. And then, so I don't know any of those professionals, because I have them on here that have said stuff. And it's just like, they're like trying to change or whatever. And it's like, well, we don't know. That's what they told us. That's what I paid all this money for, this degree. And it's like, I feel bad for them too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've worked with so many incredible people, who genuinely loved what they did, loved these kids, was working the best. You know what I mean? And I will say I've worked with some who weren't the best.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I'll get questions, people ask me about ABA, and I always am like be picky. You know what I mean? Like, who your RBT is, like, know who they are, know the people. I know a lot of kids now go to clinics, like they go to a place for ABA. For me, I always did in-home, and we did ABA for Hudson we were in LA for about 5 years. And then we moved to Utah right at COVID, just because everything was shut down. I have family here, and then we ended up just staying here, which wasn't really the plan, but that's just what happened. And so that's just, and then when I tried to get ABA in Utah, there was like a huge waiting list, and Hudson was like 6, which is like, to me, I'm like, he's a baby. He was 6, and he was like too old. Like, they were like, you can put him on the waiting list, but all the younger kids are going to come before him. And so he left. And so then at that point, I was just like, all right, whatever,
Yeah. And maybe but that's just the universe doing for you what you couldn't do, like you didn't know. Yeah.
Like, it worked out great. But like, that's what I tell people is, like, Hudson, I remember when he had RBTs come to our house, like, he had one that we loved her. Like, we loved her. And she came and she just believed in Hudson. She would just play with him, and it was super naturalistic, and it was just like cool. And he was always so happy when she came. And then we had one that literally like put a desk kept him in so he wouldn't move, and like pinned him to the chair one day, like pinned him in the room, and we were like, nope, you're out. Like, bye. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, you have to really, that's why, like, clinics, to me, sometimes I'm like, just make sure you know who your people are, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I very much like, I need to see all the time. Like, who's with my kid? I need to make sure I'm watching you with my kid. I always worked at schools. Like, I actually got my master's. I went through the whole master's program of school psychology, and Hudson, like, I never was a school psychologist. Like, I never practiced it, but I went through all the training. And then once my kids were in school, though, I was like, nope, I'm working out their school. Like, I'm not going to be, a school psychologist or look for a higher job. Like, I was like, I will be, because Hudson was like, regress. Here's this kid who like can't say what he wants. Nobody understands him. You know what I mean? They misunderstand him. Like, I always knew that. And I think because I got a luxury of Hudson talked. Like, Hudson at 2 was like my biggest talker. He talked way better than my twins did, you know, and he would like go to things and be like, I want purple, blue, I want pancakes, mommy, please pancakes. Like he was just like this little jabberbox. And so then he lost it all. And so that's why I think I had a luxury to be like, no, I know he's there. I've seen him. You know what I mean? And so I didn't trust anybody with him. So I was always like an aide at the school, making sure I knew teachers, I knew whoever was working with him. And I'd always be like really nice. I'd bring gifts to them, like, please be nice to my son. You know what I mean? And so I think it's very important for parents to like, these kids, like Hudson had an experience. So Hudson was my kid. I hope this isn't off topic, but Hudson was my kid who was like, I think because so my twins are 18 months older than Hudson. So they're very close, very close together. And when my twins went to school, Hudson would like want to go to school, you know? And like, we'd be like, no, you can't go to school yet. And then when he started school, he would like push me out of his classroom, like, bye, you know, bye, like leave, you know, he was like very independent.
Yeah. And
he's always been pretty social if you know him, right? Because he's not social where he's talking to kids, obviously. His body, he doesn't go and just play, but he is like running around kids laughing. He was always like usually wrestling them because that's how my twins played. And then he'd get in trouble because he was wrestling. And I was like, he's just trying to play.
Yeah,
you know?
that's how he played.
At our house. Yeah. And I just had, you know, teachers that really misunderstood him. And I feel like Hudson wanted to be at school for a long time. He tried so hard. And it breaks my heart because I know he wants to be around kids. I know he liked that. He liked to be a kid, you know? Mm-hmm. And the second, though, we started spelling, which I know happens a lot. It happens a lot. So we started when Hudson was just about 9 in the summer, and he was just about to go into 3rd grade. And Hudson's older, like he's a summer birthday, so he's a little bit older for his grade. Like we waited. And then, and so 3rd grade, I was like, oh my gosh, telling his teachers, telling people he was, you know, working with, like, this is what we've been doing this summer. Like, he can spell, right? Because they were like, he's not showing. And I would always plead at my IEPs. I was like, I'm going to tell you, I'm the parent that, like, I know when you have an IEP meeting with me, like, they are not happy. You know, they're like, oh, here she goes again. And I'm like,
that's my wife.
Yes. And I'm like, I've worked in schools, you guys. I know I'm a pain. I know I'm a pain to you. But like, I have to be, you know? And I always went in with that energy where I was nice and kind, but I would call 3 IEP meetings in 2 months because I was like, nope, we got, like, this isn't working. And I know I was annoying. And so they'd always bring in, like, their big guns. You know what I mean? Try to do it. And
intimidate or get,
yeah. So I had to fight really hard to try. And so once we got letterboards, I was like, oh my gosh, he had this amazing general ed teacher. And we had fought really hard where Hudson was in gen ed for half the day with a 1-to-1 aide. And then he would be in a SPED room or a life skills room for the other half of the day. And they would just kind of like bring him back and forth throughout the day, you know? And 3rd grade, he had a great gen ed teacher. And I showed her, I go, hey, because you have to like go in for like testing, right? Like you have like, we're doing testing this week. And I said, hey, let me just show you. And let me tell you, at this point, Hudson had only been spelling for like, I don't know, 3 months, you know? But you could obviously tell the kid knew how to spell, right? We're on the 3-letter boards. He could answer, you know, like how you do a lesson, and then he could answer the questions, right? So I go, let me just show you. And I remember saying to Hudson before I go, Hudson, this isn't fair to you that you have to prove yourself. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. If I put a board and you don't want to, we won't do it, and it doesn't matter. I go, but if you want to show them what you can do, like, do it. And if not, it's totally fine, because this isn't your responsibility. You know what I mean? But I remember in the back of my head going like, please, because Hudson has always been my kid, though. He performs. Like, just a backstory. We lived in LA. We did tons of auditions for my twins because my twins were like the cutest little identical twins, right? And so people would be like, oh my gosh, you have to do this. So we tried. My twins at an audition would be like, not say a word, and Hudson would be dancing around the room. And he'd go, hi, Hudson, I'm 2. I'm Hudson, I'm 2. You know, like, he was just this outgoing kid. He jumped on a stage at my boys' preschool performance and started dancing. Like,
that's awesome.
Like, he's just like that. And so I kind of was like, I bet this kid is going to perform, you know? So
he's going to step up to the plate.
Yes. And so we go to his teachers and they start testing him. And this is 3rd grade. They're still really keeping him low. Do you know what I mean? So it's easy for him. They're like, hey, Hudson, what's this? You know, and he just is spelling, and their jaws drop, right? Because they did not believe me, right? For years, they didn't believe me that this kid is smart, that he understands, and their jaws dropped. We go to an IEP meeting, Speech pathologist is like, no, nope, nope, we don't do it. She won't even watch. She won't even like do it. She kind of mocks me. Her
Yeah.
fists are literally like this. And I go, and I just see it. And I promise, like, I'm not rude in IEP meetings. I stay calm. I'm like, this is, I know you guys, I've been in the schools, I get it, but this is what we need, you know, like this is working. And I know she is furious. And I go, you know what? Let's just take his speech out. I go, it's not working. He literally, I know he did not like her. He like whacked her in the face one day, and it probably was on purpose. You know what I mean? But like, she sent it. Yeah. Anyway, I won't go down
No,
that route.
that's well,
like,
yeah. A lot of them aren't even allowed to be in the room with the kid, or they could like lose their license or whatever, which tells you how suspect it is. But whatever.
So she won't. So after that point, and Hudson wasn't in that IEP meeting, so he's not hearing these conversations, you know. But the conversations he's hearing at school, right? Like what he's hearing his teachers talk about him, what he knows that speech teacher talks about, because she talks about, right? You like take a kid back to class and go, he was very uncooperative today, right? So he hears that. He didn't know how to do that, right? So all that stuff. But I canceled speech right at that moment. I was like, we're not going to do speech anymore at school because you don't believe in him. So why would he learn from you?
Are we wasting each other's time? Exactly.
Yeah. She walked out of there so pissed, and she left right then. She's like, "May I be excused then?" And I was like, "Sure," you know. And
Later.
the whole team is like, "I really wouldn't do that. She's the best here. She's the best we have, you know. Like she's the best." And I'm like, "I'm sure she's great with other kids. Do you know what I mean? But for my kid, it's not going to work." And I really didn't have bad feelings. But what's interesting is, so right after that, so they're not allowed to use letterboards at school. They won't try. One of his teachers, like, I would put it in the backpack and she would try, but I'm also like, you have to be trained. Like you can't just go put a letterboard in front and be like, do it, you know?
Yes.
So there's a lot to it, and I get that. But right after that, Hudson, my kid who like pushed me out of classrooms, right? Go home, mom, right? Never ever had an issue to go to school. Again, I don't know how his body was really feeling, right? Now I know so much more.
Yeah.
But at the time, I always thought he liked it. He would not go to school, and I could not get him out of the car. And it was just months of just like what do we do? Like what? And I have to trust him, right? I can't be like, oh, he just doesn't want to go today. Well, no, because he's never done that before. And that's when we started homeschooling.
Well, and then the thought of like sending your kid who can't communicate and you don't know what they're saying about them or what they're doing to them or any of that, that emotional toll it takes on the parents is crazy. That was hard to begin with, but then when they're like, what do you call like, not wanting to go, then it's kind of like, dude, now we're in serious, like a problem here. We got to make a decision. And that's kind of what happened for us. So it's kind of similar. My wife did the same thing. We spelled in front of the board and like, they were like, well, we can't really, it was just basically like, we can't acknowledge that or do that. And that was kind of what happened. It's like, well, we can't do this school anymore then. Like, what the hell? Like, because I'm not going to send her here and he doesn't even really want to be here. And then to think like, you guys are going to do stuff that's like below her level or whatnot. It's like, what are we wasting time for? Because the only thing that is good here is like the social aspect, but it's like, is it really even that good? Because if you guys aren't presuming competence, you're not even really letting her do anything anyway. So that was kind of, we had very similar stories. And it was kind of like we were forced into the homeschool thing. And it was just one of those, like, everything happens for a reason. And now it's been great and everything, but it is hard, like just in general, because even when your kid likes school, it's still terrifying to know, like, dude, what the hell are they even doing there? Because they can't come home and communicate. Like when my son comes up, what did they do today or whatever? You don't know. And now we homeschool my typical son too, because long story short, they ganged up on my wife in an IEP meeting. And then like I dropped Marissa off the next morning and flipped out. Like they said something fly to me and I just started cussing and screaming. And then I get back in the car and I'm like, well, damn, we can't send her back here or send my son here. Like, this is bad. And everything happened for a reason. And then COVID happened, which made it way easier to, like, yeah, homeschool is probably the best option anyway.
Yeah.
So that was the other thing, but it's like everything happens for a reason. But same thing. I like how you said that. Like, trust your gut when it comes. Like, I don't mean to say, like, because I bash professionals a lot on my page, and it's not all of them, because there's enough knowledge that there are great professionals out there. You know what I mean? There's great teachers. Obviously, majority of teachers get in for it for the love of kids and to try to help them flourish. They're not they're not getting in it for the money. You know, they're in there because they want to like educate children and make them better. But that doesn't mean that they're the best option for your child, because they might be trained in only one aspect that your kid is not going to take to. So then it sucks. And you're at that crossroads, because I run into it all the time. Like, but my teachers are so nice and they're so good. And, and that might be the truth, but that doesn't mean that they're going to help your kid progress, because they might not have the knowledge to even make that happen.
Yeah.
So it's hard for parents to like come to that point, because especially when you get a relationship with the teacher, and same thing, like her ABA therapist and all that stuff, we loved them. You know what I mean? Like on a personal level, we were like, I think we were invited to one wedding or whatever. And then as soon as we started that spelling, they like didn't even like, I don't have Facebook or anything, but like just saying they don't even like anything or comment anymore on anything. Like they're gone. You know what I mean? Like they don't want anything to do with us now. And it's like, really, like that's kind of diabolical when you think about it, because it's like, what you were working on with my daughter, okay? Like this third, fourth, 4-year-old stuff, and then we're posting videos of her answering crazy questions, and you're not even gonna recognize that or like cheer us on or anything, because it goes against what you were taught. So it's kind of messed up on a certain aspect, and it's like, how do you not acknowledge it? And I say it all the time, like, screw them. They're gonna know deep down inside that what these kids might be capable of. So when they're asking them to do 1+1, and then they see my daughter who's the same age doing crazy multiplication, they're going to know, like, man, maybe this kid's capable of it too. So hopefully some of them take to that and recognize. But we had like a very similar thing. And now my wife, we had like a lawyer with the IEPs and stuff. And now we're to the point where they like kind of know, like, just kind of let them do their own thing. You know what I mean? We don't want to mess with them. They're not going to mess with us. And it works out that way.
Yeah. And I wish, like, I feel like what can be changed immediately, and I understand, like, it really is system. Like, where we are, we're in Utah, and where we're at, the public schools are great. Like, for my twins, right? And my twins, like, I'm like the only neurotypical in my family, okay? My husband has ADHD, my twins have ADHD, husband has autism, but, like, it works for them. You know what I mean? And it's like our schools are so nice and clean, and you have great people, but we're so behind when it comes to Hudson and special education. We are like 10 years behind, at least like California, right?
Yeah.
And California, on the other hand, where we were at, had horrible public schools. Like, no way I'm sending my twins there, let alone Hudson.
Yes.
But you could find we found this incredible school in LA. That was a charter school. You had to get in lottery, and they were incredible. They were all inclusive school. Every class had a gen ed and a sped teacher. They never pulled kids out. It was incredible.
That's awesome.
Which taught me a lot what schools could be. But the system, right? So teachers, like you said, they're not trained in basic behavior strategies, right? Or competence.
Yes.
But what I don't understand, and what could be immediately changed, is I literally showed you my child who you said can't follow a simple direction, right? Doesn't know their colors. We're not sure he knows his ABCs. I just showed you he spelled out every word you just had him spell. So at very minimum, now that his expectation needs to be lifted. And what they can control is his input, right? I understand you can't have the letterboards there because, again, I also need to train someone to be with him to have letterboards. And so there are certain things that need to happen. You can't just send something I get all the time is like, where do I get those letterboards? Which I'm like, I love your enthusiasm, but please don't just go buy letterboards and start on yourself. You have to be trained. There are certain things it needs to be done in a method.
Well, and I'm going to cut you off again, because anybody who's listening, that is like a huge thing, because then it'll deter your focus. Like, oh, this shit don't work. Yeah. I asked him 3 questions. I asked him what he wanted for dinner, and he didn't even answer. Yeah. And I had the letterboard right there. Like, this is bull crap. No, you got to work to that point. And like I try to say, like, we've been at this for like over 3 years, and we're just starting to get open. And we're doing, like, we got practitioners all the time. And in turn, the younger they are, the harder it is, because they have less control of their body the younger they are, and as they hit puberty and get stronger and their body develops, it becomes easier, because you're seeing the documentary spellers, like the kid, the first time he gets on it, he can spell, but he's also like 17. Right. So that's a great point. So no, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I do this. The same people message me that, and I'm like, hold up, it's not like that. Yeah. Like, yeah, you can work with them like that, but it's not just like, what's your thoughts and feelings here, and that's not how it goes.
It's not how it goes. I know, and I just want to add to that too, because I think that's so important. Hudson has been doing this for 1.5 years, and he is not open. I don't ask Hudson. We're not at a spot where I'm like, Hudson, what do you want to eat? Right? Mm-hmm. Hudson, what do you think about that? Like, what do you want to watch on TV? We are not at that point, right? And it's important Like, and there's a reason why, and it all makes sense why, right?
Yes.
We're working on his motor, we're working on his body moving the way he wants. And if he's not reliable and we're in his poking, I
Yes.
can't ask questions yet. And there's a lot to that I know you get.
Yeah.
But yes, please don't go and just buy letterboard and start asking your kid questions. And
That's not how it works.
no, and like you said, like we are fighting so hard to make this looked at as a reliable way of communication, which sucks that we even have to be teaching it, right? But we are working so hard to get this as a reliable way. And I know it's coming. I know change is coming. I know it's coming. But it's very scary that if people just go buy letterboards and don't do the method, you're going to ruin the reliability of the entire method.
You're doing more harm than good. That's 100%. And then especially if you bring that attention to the school board and be like, oh, there's this thing where you put letterboards, check it out. And then they're not really doing it right. And that's why there's tons of practitioners and stuff. Some of them offer online. I had a thing where there's like immersion weeks and classes, you can online classes, and there's a guidebooks and stuff like that will definitely help. And more importantly, explain. Because like then I'm sure you get this all the time. They're like 3-4 years old and it's like, well, that's probably not going to work. And they can spell, they understand what you're saying, but they're not going to have the motor control to be able to like show you that yet. So my main thing is I always tell them, just know that this exists.
Yeah.
And keep presuming competence, keep trying to dial in their gut health, keep trying to build their motor through any activity you can, like just working out, playing, trying to build a brain-body connection, because then when it is time to get on the boards, you're way more likely to succeed.
Yeah. And one thing you can control, and this is where I was getting at with schools too, is what we can control, and especially, which I always tell ones with little ones, is you can control the input, because, and that's so important. And even like if I have clients who are just super dysregulated one day, then we're going to just read a lesson. You know what I mean? I'm going to focus on the input. And I wish, to me, that's what schools can start with. And here's what drives me crazy is that we know there's so much research that when we hold a low expectation for somebody, that's where they go, right? And if you hold a high expectation, we know that's where they go. Yet for our kids, we don't do that. I guess that research is like, well, that doesn't matter for those kids. Just do it.
There's not words coming out of their mouth. That's just the dumbest thing when you think about it, And that's what it's. There's one S2C practitioner. Everybody kind of says it, but it's like, where's the harm in presuming competence? What if you are wrong and they're not understanding? Oh wow, I treated that kid with more respect than they deserved, or whatever. It's like, what are we really harming here? And that is the point where it's like, it's hard to fathom because there are so many kids who are talked about like they're not even in the room. And I know I kind of did it with Marissa and stuff like that. And then they're fed the bull crap curriculum of like, this is a cow and there's a cat and here's the horse and all that. And it's like, dude, I can do like some physics stuff if you asked me. And it's like, you're freaking like demeaning me with this stuff, and that's just it. And then it's frustration, so then they're not even gonna be able to regulate their body, and then the train wreck happens. And that's where a lot of these kids are at that aren't getting like the competence presumed, because that's the other thing where it's like, I can only imagine the frustration, because once you understand like about apraxia and the brain body disconnect and all that, it's like, sit here, point to this, you got to get it 3 times right or you're dumb and don't understand it, is basically. And it's like, could you imagine how demeaning and frustrating that is? And then they have a body they can't control, so it's just going to skyrocket out of control more. And then when they start headbutting and hitting and all that stuff, and then you're just giving them fruit snacks all day, and they're on this insulin sugar roller coaster to put on top of it, it's like, dude, we're really doing a lot of damage to these kids, when it's like, if we just like made it a lot simpler and like treat them the, I don't know, the age that they are, and try to like feed them better foods and let them play as kids and swing and run and throw things and be around, like, I think you would see a lot more progress.
Yeah. And that's what the last place that we had Hudson at, that we tried for a school, which they were incredible. And I actually went to school with Hudson for the first month, and I was his CRP, and I used letterboards. And it was really cool because, once again, at an IEP meeting, Hudson had to prove himself. He had to show this is what he knows. But I will tell you, and he's incredible. Like, I cannot wait, which I think this is part of our block for why Hudson hasn't progressed as quickly, is because I'm like, I cannot wait to see the things that this kid has to say. And the things that he will say to a bit, like, I fully picture Hudson on a huge stage with a huge audience, spelling, like, typing his things out or spelling his things out. You know what I mean? And he just is so good when he has to be, like, when he has to prove himself, which is so unfair. but he delivers and he does so good. And so he did this at an IP meeting for this last school we were at, and teachers were like, they were like, looked at him and they said, Hudson, I am so sorry. I am
That's
so
awesome.
sorry. And just that is incredible. And so I did go to school with him for a month. And honestly, I know it was me because I hated the fact that I had to go to school with my son for him to be able to show what he knew. You know what I mean? Like I loved going to school with Hudson. I loved him proving people wrong, but I hated that like
He's
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's 10. Do you think he wants his mom at school with him every day? And so I went to school kind of like pissed. And then he was having huge meltdowns. And I was like, okay, I know this is me. I'm so sorry. We're just gonna be home because I am so dysregulated and mad at this situation.
And then that's just gonna carry over to him and then make everything more negative. I 100% agree.
And I wish I could have been better, you know, but at the same time, I don't think he wants his mom at school with him every day. Like, I don't think that was the solution.
No.
But it did change. It changed the whole SPED department's thought of kids like him.
That's awesome.
Because, you know what I mean? And he did what he needed to do, and he changed something there, something really big, and he planted the seed. So that was cool.
Well, and that alone, like, can make such a difference because, like, then those two professionals tell two professionals, and then they might look into something, and then all of a sudden, like you said, the ball's in motion, and they're not going to be able to doubt us. Like, we're coming full-fledged. Like, you will recognize us all soon because the bottom line is there's thousands of us, you know, like what do we got to lose? We're all quacks on this like conspiracy theory of that our kids can spell and what am I editing these videos and all the other kids and everything? It's like, no, this is real, dude. Our kids, and they're the passion that we have. And it's basically the same thing. It was like anger of like, why the hell did nobody tell me about this? Like that was like the first thing. Like I'm like what? Why isn't this like an option? Why wasn't this told to me when she was 4? You know, like what the hell? And like to think like videos like this and movies and books and all that will eventually, whether they want to recognize it or not, there's going to be an army of parents calling like, what about this? Like, why can't my kid do this or whatnot? So eventually they're going to have to recognize it. It's just we're at that forefront. And I try to tell like Marissa, you're a pioneer in this. You know what I mean? Like you're at the forefront, and same with Hudson. It's like, dude, you guys will, when you're 20, 30 years old, will look back and see how they're treating these kids and how popular spelling is, and you guys will have a big part in what happened there. And real quick, like Marissa's the same way. I had that interview with Dana, her like original practitioner who does all the apraxia work and everything, and she was spelling on her board, on her thing, like, tell Dad if we got to do a Q&A, I can come down there. Like she was... Like we were, and it's like, no, that's not needed. We don't want to do that or anything like that. But same thing, like I want to prove, and they're out, man, because they know. And that's the one thing, and I'm sure you know, anytime you've encountered like older spellers, the only thing they want is for like younger kids to get the option to do this because they know how much it meant to them. And that right there, when I would go to those, like when I went to like an immersion week or whatever, God, universe sent me to those things for a reason because I needed it at the time. But to hear like the compassion at the older kids, like, yeah, it's all right, you guys got it wrong, just fix it now. You know what I mean? It makes sure the other kids, because these kids have like the most beautiful souls in the world and like literally just want the best for everybody. And they don't care that they were stuck in silent prisons. They just want to make sure that it doesn't happen to the next kid.
Yeah, I know. You're so right. I've heard that over and over and over from just like books I've read or listening to open spellers that are older. And it's like, they're not mad. They're not like mad at your parents. They like love their parents, like thank you, and they forgive you for everything. And I hear that over and over. Like, we just need to get this out. We need more people. Like, we need to give it to more non-speakers, you know. And I remember when I was sitting in the classroom with Hudson, and there was a girl, one of his classmates was next to her, and I just like, I kept saying like, she can do this. Like I kept saying that to the teachers, like she can do this. She can do this, you know? Like, can you give me her parents' number? Can you, like, I need to find a way. But Hudson just went and like held her hand. You know what I mean? And I was just like, I know. And I remember getting in the car with Hudson. I'm like, I know, Hudson, we gotta find a way.
I'm going to share a story because I'm proud. I'm pumped that I was able to have. So we recently had like Marissa had requested a birthday party. We had it on Sunday. She wanted a pool party, which is super convenient for Ohio in January. But we found a place, because we did a bowling one last year. That's what she wanted. And then so she asked for a pool party. So we found a place. It was kind of cheap, too. Anything worked out. We were able to rent out an indoor pool for like $80 an hour. And we had like 6 or 7 of her speller friends. But we had a kid, she's in something called the Miracle League. I think they're everywhere. Like it's like a baseball, special needs baseball group. Well, I'm freaking, once I found out about spelling, and there was a couple of kids that I were like, just like Marissa, I'm like, they were autistic non-speakers. I'm like, dude, I just went up to their parents. We bought a bunch of copies of Underestimated, and I'm like, I'm handing them out. And like, I'm explaining to their parents, like, I don't care, whatever. You could call me a quack as soon as I leave. But 2 of them took to it. You know what I mean? And then the one kid was at the party on Sunday, and he's been to like all these speller gatherings, and like his mom is totally bought into the whole thing. And like, dude, I want to like cry seeing how happy he is. And it's not like that I'm responsible, but it's like, dude, I'm so glad I opened my mouth. And but then again, we have a kid that Marissa was friends with at when she went to school, and she's actually gone to a birthday party before, and her parents just haven't acknowledged or anything or really gone into it. And Marissa, they played each other in Miracle League, and Marissa, she was on second base, and Marissa was in the outfield, and literally darted up to her and hugged her. And I'm like, this is like the cutest thing in the world. And I knew it was like, because Marissa's like, dude, I know the stuff you're going through, they're not presuming competence or whatever. And like one of those things, almost like a sympathy thing, like we'll get it, you know what I mean? We're going to keep trying or whatever to prove to your parents. And I don't know, man, like the way that they just feel for the other kids is just a testament to how like beautiful their souls are, and it's awesome. So please, like, I try to always tell that, because I dealt with that guilt as a parent. And if you don't, because your kid doesn't even care. They just care that you're doing the right thing now, and that you're going to try to continue to do the right thing. So
yeah, 100%.
and it is. No, go ahead.
Sorry, if anybody, I just want to piggyback on that, because if anyone's listening right now, I always, who like you're doubtful, you're like, I don't know, you're skeptical, right? You're like, this is kooky or whatever, right? Like, I promise, just try.
Yes.
Like, the least I say to people, even if you go to a session and you're like, I don't believe it, it's not real, right? You have all these negative thoughts and you're like, this isn't happening. My kid can't do that. I'm going to tell you the very least that is going to happen from you going to a spelling session, is you are going to have somebody show you what it's like to presume confidence in your kid. Mm. You're going to see somebody talk to your kid, like the age they're at. They're going to acknowledge that they're smart. And I promise you, you will see a different look in your child's eyes. Like every client I've ever had, whether their parents believe them or not yet, the second I go, okay, we're going to learn something new. I'm going to read you a lesson. I know you already know how to spell, but we're going to work on your body. That's what we're going to work on today. You have nothing to prove to me, right? This is what I always say. And I start spelling, and they look at me like, oh my gosh. Like,
she gets it. Yes. Thank you for saying this. Thank you for saying this, because I'm going to piggyback on you real quick. That was Dana the first time, like, and then I'm thinking like, this lady's crazy, dude. And then she starts reading like a 6th grade lesson, but that was the same thing. And then like, sure as shit, as soon as she did, like Marissa did her running around, and she's like trying to steal Dana's water and drink it, and just typical stuff that she always did, organizing the pencils and everything. And then Dana's like, Marissa, come on, we're going to sit and spell now. And same thing, like Marissa got her body on that freaking chair and sat and started to spell. And like the way, because it was like, there was no baby talk, and like, you know what I mean? Like that, it was just like, I'm talking to a 7-8-year-old kid right now. Yeah. And then like that alone, I thought like, this is weird, because they're going to do the potty song and stuff like that. And it's like, that's what we're used to, because then that's what we were like taught. And then it's like, well, what's this lady, And then sure enough, luckily Marissa stepped to the plate and was able to prove to us, but yes, that is how it's done. You talk to them, and like, we're kind of going through it with OTs now, because we want to do OT, and my wife gets like pissed, because you go to these things and they got my 11-year-old girl like, all right, we're gonna do this, and it's like, oh, Jess is like, oh, I hate this, and then, but it's like, dude, just presume competence, professionals, like, talk to them the age they are, because they understand, and that's just, it's huge for them, the respect they deserve, that we take for granted, because that's just the norm. And then for years, these kids have been talked to down, and I'll say it again, like they're not even in the room. And it's like, man, that's demeaning. And what you're doing to them is just like doubting them, like it sucks. And then like you said, they're only going to perform to those standards because those are the ones you're setting for them.
Right. Exactly. I can't tell you how many times now that like Hudson recently cut his hand really bad, and we had to go to the hospital, and he tore all the way through the ligament. And he, like every doctor and nurse that came in was like, hey, and he's 10, right? He's 10 at this point. And it's really nice for me that I have twins that are just like a year and a half older, because it helps me check myself. Like, how do I talk to them, right? It helps me check myself. But we go to the hospital, and every nurse, which they're great, they mean the best. Okay, I don't want to put them down because they were so lovely with him. But they're kind of be like, "Hey, bud, all right, so what we're gonna do?" And I just now, so many times I've had those moments with Hudson where I just look at him and I'm just like, "I'm so sorry," you know, like, or I'm just like I just like I'll kind of make fun of them with him, you know, just
Yeah.
I know they like I know they
Yes.
want to be like you too. I'm sorry, you know. And I think like you said, like I think he's very forgiving of that and he understands the thing. But I think it's just the fact that now he has his mom and his dad and his grandma and his aunts and his brothers, like know in those moments that we all will kind of be like, I'm sorry, Hudson. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
we get it.
that it just like it makes him like you just see a confidence in him.
Mm-hmm.
When you presume confidence in your kid, like you instantly you just presume confidence in them. I have a client right now who is in her 20s and her motor is just super complex. Her progress is very slow because it's just she just has a lot of it's just complex.
Yes.
But it's obvious, right? To me, it's obvious. Like she's got this down. And you can tell her parents aren't like exactly sure what to think, right? And I get that because for 20 something years, everybody's told them she's like an 18-month-old, right? And I get as a parent that you finally are just like, okay, it is what it is. You know what I mean? And but the one thing that the mom will always say to me is ever since you come, she has been different. There's like she just notices something different. She's not sure if she quite believes in it. She's not sure, you know what I mean? She's not bought in yet, but she notices something is different since you've been here. And like start there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Just start there. Like nothing bad is going to happen to your child for starting. If anything, you're going to see them be confident. You're going to see how they act when somebody believes in them. Like, and what if somebody and we learned this in our like training, and I'm sure you learned this, you know, but because you said it, like some people ask like, well, what if they don't know that, right? What if you are asking them a question and like, what if they really don't know and you're shooting too high? Well, so what? Then we teach them, right? Then they're learning something from this lesson. But what's more harmful?
What do you do with a typical kid? They don't. I didn't know anything in high school. I was a wreck.
Right. So
you still treat them. Yeah, exactly.
But what's more harmful? Me overshooting or me undershooting?
Exactly.
Right?
I want to share this really quick because kind of like what you were talking about with the professionals or whatever. There was a point where I realized, okay, my 8-year-old son, you know, he's been with it from the beginning. He understands the brain-body connection, or like he'll just say like, Rissa's having a crazy body right now and stuff like that. So we had a person at the spelling where my daughter goes for spelling lessons, and there was a kid, a boy, he was like 7 or 8, and he came in, and the dad was like skeptical or whatever, and he did good, like he spelled or whatever, and Rissa was there. And at the end of the lesson, Rissa walked up and kissed him.
Oh my God.
And my son said, oh my gosh, Rissa's got to be so embarrassed that her body went and did that. And then like right there, it's like, dude, my 8-year-old son knows more about like autism than majority of professionals because he knew that was the brain body disconnect. Like I'm just like gonna go up and like I'm sure she might wanted to hug him or whatever. She literally like kissed him or whatever, and it's like that had to be like embarrassing for her. But that's where it's like, dude, they don't have control sometimes. And I had a video the other day or whatever where it's like, dude, yeah, your 10, 11-year-old kid might run into traffic, so you got to watch out. It doesn't mean that they don't know that traffic is gonna hurt them. It's because they literally can't control their body.
Right. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. And that's such a good point because I think that's what makes us think, oh, well, no, they don't understand because they do things like that. They're low running. When you understand, no, they don't want to. They literally don't want to. And why do we know that? Because they tell us.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like they're telling us.
More importantly, other kids have told us before. Yeah. We're not making this up. We got better things to do than to con you into doing some spelling method that doesn't even make me any money. No, literally. And I like you said, we kind of talked about it at the beginning. It's like, dude, I'm at that crossroads where it's like, if I don't do this, I almost feel guilty about it because it's like, I know what it felt when I figured it out. And if somebody could have like given me that information a couple years sooner, it would have definitely saved us a lot of money and heartache. And dude, to think, I know, I can only imagine you did it too. All the therapies, the waiting list, the driving, and then you got 2 twins that you have to drag along everywhere or whatever. And same thing. And it's like the emotional wreck and just hardships that causes. And then you're going to these therapies that aren't even really doing anything, but you're doing them because that's what they tell you to do. And if I would have understood things from a apraxia aspect and a brain body disconnect, it would have been like, man, that would have made things so much clearer. And a big thing that like I held a lot of guilt for is I remember reading Logan bedtime stories and not really reading Marissa them because it's like, oh, she's not even really paying attention or listening. And it's like, does she even understand? We're talking about, you know what I mean? And it's like, that's crazy. She's listening to me in the other room read Logan like age appropriate bedtime stories, and then I'm not going to do the same. We would read this. I would read this toddler book. I love you. Good night to her every night, and that was what we did because that's all I thought she could comprehend. And then here I could have been reading her freaking whatever, Harry Potter, and she would have got it. So it's tough, and I had guilt for that, but that's what we're on here for, so other people don't make those same mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know you probably we've been going at it. Kaley, this was awesome. We will do this again if you're willing to because I like it a lot and I think it could do some good.
Yeah.
And like your page is awesome. And obviously everybody probably follows you, and dude, my favorite thing about these is when people, I'm not good at multitasking, so I want to clarify, you guys have been making awesome comments, but for us to conversate and respond to those is very hard. So the fact that all of you are like, I see them commenting on each other's stuff, follow each other. And same thing, I'm sure you can relate to this, Kaley. Dude, like the comments and stuff are tough to get to and respond to, and the messages, because there's a lot of them. And it's not that I don't want to get to them. It's just that we can't sometimes. So the fact that when people like look out for each other in the comments, that's the coolest shit in the world. And please continue to do that and follow and support. And dude, if you guys follow each other and your pages suck, then unfollow them or whatever. But at least give them a try and like try to connect and like build the community and just help each other whenever possible.
Yes, love that. I second that.
Yes.
My greatest friends I met on Instagram. So
what's that?
My like best friends, autism moms, I've met on Instagram.
Yeah.
Legit.
Yes.
And
I just started. We started like a support dads thing on this like WhatsApp and shit. We got like 20 members, and it was awesome. Like the one dad was talking about, hey, what toothpaste do you guys use that your kid? And it's just little shit, and that's cool. Like, dude, the littlest thing that they might be going through, you don't know the information that can make such a difference in somebody's life. Rachel was talking. She was down here. I remember because I said something about swimming, and she's like, "Oh yeah, with apraxic bodies, they like swimming because they can feel their body more in the water." And I was like, well, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, putting a pool in my backyard, you know. And it's like, but that's what. And then I'll post. I did the videos like, dude, Marissa likes buckets of water and throwing rocks in them. And yeah, that's not what 10-year-old, like people look at that like, oh, it's such a great idea. And it's like, at first I like tried to prevent her from doing that stuff. And it's like, no, embrace that shit. They're getting sensory input out of that. And that's helping them. And she likes doing it and it calms her. So like in the summertime, we're outside, there's a bucket of water. We crank some tunes on. I'm doing yard work. She's on there throwing. It's awesome. And little stuff like that can help parents.
Yeah. 100%. And I want to add to that. What I love is that what our kids do, like you think your kid's the only one, and I promise you, anything your child do, he is not she is not the only one. Like,
no.
So many times I post things and people are like, oh my gosh, me too, like everything.
Yes.
So that's
what was the one I talked about? Like Marissa used to like drink water and just spit it out. Yeah. And then I share like how every freaking cupboard in our fridge is locked at all times. We have to lock the front door. And then we went through like a 3-month period where we had to shut the water off in all the sinks because she would literally just turn them on and then put her hand up there and and it's just her seeking sensory. And once again, she was like 8, 9 when this was happening. She knew what she was doing was wrong, but couldn't help but do it. So that's one of those things where it's like when we share that stuff and parents relate, and it's like, that's awesome. I'm not the only one that's going through that. Yeah. So, and I'm pretty sure you said it at the beginning, like I've learned more on here than I've learned through any doctor pretty much. So 100%. It's awesome. And we're going to keep it up. So yes. Thank you, Kaley, for taking time out your day, for helping everybody. I'm going to make like a reel or something. I'll tag you or whatever. We'll collab. So get some cool input on it. So I appreciate your time. Everybody in the comments, thank you.